Minecraft has come a long way since the days of Classic and in-dev now over a decade ago, and a lot of its progress is thanks to the plentiful updates that it has received over the years. The addition of different biomes, survival mode, multiplayer, hunger, and many more to say the least. And with the first part of the Caves and Cliffs update in 1.17, an update which was neither cavey nor cliffy, Minecraft finally did what no game was brave enough to do, and added whoopers to it. So how do you top an update like that? You don't. Thanks for watching. While I would say that the vast majority of changes made to Minecraft over the years were for the better, one update that I never really liked in particular was the Biome generation overhaul in beta 1.8. While that update brought plenty of other content with it, what it did was make the world generation very formulaic and predictable. But with Minecraft 1.18's overhaul, it's anything but. And while part 2 of the Caves and Cliffs update hasn't added a vast amount of content, it has finally delivered on the Caves and Cliffs part that the title implies. Sure, some of that stuff that they promised when they first announced it last year is still missing, but what's here is still a dummy thick rework of how each world is created. And though you might say that it's not that big, it's just a revision of the world generation, the thing about world gen is that it has such a massive impact on gameplay, not just aesthetics or when it comes to choosing where you'll build your home. And I don't want to downplay the effect that aesthetics has on enjoyment, certainly for some people more than others, but you don't want to build your base in some dingy little swamp or ugly barren plain. If you ask me, a nice view and surrounding is a must for a Minecraft base. But one of the main impacts that world generation has, especially in a sandbox game like Minecraft, is that it has a huge bearing on your progression. The massive and sprawling new cave systems allow players to spelunk for materials more freely, and provides a faster route to the depths of the world, allowing players more so inclined to delve deeply and greedily quickly for ores and loot. And one part of the update that has a huge impact on progression is the new ore generation. Rather than ores only spawning below a certain depth, some will now only spawn above a certain height, as well as the availability of each ore varying with height rather than simply appearing at the same rate from a certain depth. What this does is encourage you to either spelunk in different cave systems or dig mine shafts at different depths in order to find a specific kind of ore which spawns at that level, and allows you to focus on getting whatever particular ore that you are most in need of, rather than mindlessly digging at one level to get everything at once. Another big part of this update is that the world is a lot bigger. The world height has been increased by 128 blocks, the ground being another 64 blocks deep and another 64 blocks being added to the maximum world height, meaning that landforms and buildings can tower even higher and mineshafts and caves can delve even deeper. Though coming back to the aesthetical side of the world generation, I think that it's near impossible to argue that the game does not look about 1,000 times better now. I remember missing the days of alpha and early beta where you'd get much more interesting looking terrain and elevation before beta 1.8 kinda ruined it. And by kinda I mean completely fucking ruined it. And one thing that I particularly hated about the beta 1.8 world gen was that Extreme Hills was just its own biome, meaning that all mountain ranges were snow-capped and all looked kinda same, whereas now, mountains aren't necessarily cold, nor are they necessarily peaked. There's so much more variance with them, and it makes them a hell of a lot more interesting to explore. And it's the same with elevation in general. There are no longer hill sub-biomes either. Variance in elevation is now simply built into how the world generates terrain rather than restricted to biome placement, leaving more varied and exaggerated terrain to help each generated world feel not only more unique, but look more appealing. Rivers and beaches are bigger, mountains are taller, and caves are deeper, with new sprawling cave systems that extend far below the world's surface. You'll now often find massive cave openings in the ground and in the sides of mountains, that thanks to the new world height can seem almost impossibly large. And not only are they bigger, but they're more feature-filled, with local water levels allowing huge underground lakes and aquifers and more varied formations, allowing huge open spaces and narrow little tunnels to squeeze through. The previously unimplemented dripstone and lush caves have also made their way in, adding some interesting new underground biomes to explore, as well as making sure that whoopers now have a proper spawn condition. 1.18 is definitely the prettiest that Minecraft's landscape has ever looked, both above and below ground. In one of my survival worlds I found this awesome little valley surrounded by snow-capped mountains on all sides, and I've never been so sure of exactly where I should build my base in my life. In Minecraft, for me personally, aesthetics are something that I almost always consider over practicality, and this new world generation has hit it out of the park. Another great feature that 1.18 brings is that the terrain generation between 1.17 and older worlds to newly spawned 1.18 chunks is a smooth transition, both on the surface as well as below. The way that terrain is generated now means that you won't end up with huge straight lines of chunk borders like in the old days, and the bedrock level is pushed down to -64, even on worlds where it used to be 0. I will say that the new world generation hasn't been a seamless transition for everything, however. Villages in particular have a little bit of trouble with it. They can tend to be more than a little disjointed and chaotic in layout, but if it's the trade-off for having less generic biome generation, then it's definitely worth it. And it's not like every biome is now filled with hills and inclines. The world will still generate areas that are flatter, and it's good to still have that variance or a nice even area to build on. And alongside all of the new world generation features that we've already covered, there's not a whole lot else to this update other than the many minor fixes and changes that typically ship with the Minecraft update. Evil villager mobs will now no longer attack baby villages like it's Skyrim or something. Dungeons have been made more common, which is nice considering you hardly ever used to find the bloody things, and whoopers have been made less suicidal, which is a change that I also greatly approve of. Though another notable gameplay change that this update does bring is that hostile mobs will now only spawn in areas where the light level is completely 0, rather than 7 or below. Personally, I very much like this change, as I often used to find myself obsessing over how to make sure every block in my base is at least level 8 light or above, often requiring an excessive use of torches. Now I can relax a little more and even account for some gloomier lighting, without fear of having an explosive green penis manifesting itself out of thin air when I least expect it. As previously mentioned, both dripstone and lush caves have made their way into world generation, however the deep dark biome, the home of the planned warden mob, has still not been implemented into the game, which is in all honesty rather disappointing. Personally, I'm not a hardcore redstone nerd, so the sculk blocks and their potential uses aren't a great loss to me, but it's a little disappointing to see something like this just miss the cut. And speaking of features still not implemented, the Archaeology feature is also yet to make its way in, despite also being announced in Minecraft Live last year. Again, not a feature I'd honestly see myself spending a lot of time with, but it's once again slightly concerning to see planned content be delayed even further. Though if there's anything that the games industry needs these days, it's a little more patience when it comes to not only updates but game releases. And for a game that's already received plenty of updates and is now 10 years old going by its 1.0 release date, let alone its beta, I think Mojang have earned the right to start taking things a little slowly. And that's really what it comes down to. Despite this game having been a major force in the games industry for so long and being one that I've spent countless hours playing over the last decade, this new update has made it feel almost new again. As I've said before, Minecraft has already shown that it has stood the test of time, and it's hardly necessary for it to still be receiving new updates, let alone major overhauls. And although they might be few and far between these days, I'm glad to see that it's still being shown some love to this day, especially in the aspect where I reckon it needed it most. So thanks for joining me for my little overview of part 2 of the greatest Minecraft update ever. Leave a like if you support a Whooper ethno state, and be sure to subscribe for more funny Whooper Man content.